So I'm Lea Padron. I'm one of the child placement coordinators. So I do foster care. I license our foster homes, and then I support them, and then I also do kinship as well. And this is Jenny. Go ahead and.
I'm Jenny Longcore. I'm a foster parent through Oneida for 9 years.
Yep.
Been doing foster care for 20.
Yep. So next month or May is the Foster Care Appreciation Month, and so we always try to like spoil our foster parents as much as we can, especially around that time because we have kind of an excuse. So we always like to we'd like to do something fun with them, and lately they've really enjoyed bingo, so we always do that. And this year, because of the pandemic, it's been a little bit more difficult, so we've been doing everything virtually, and we've been creative with that. We played bingo once already, and coming up for our appreciation event, we're doing bingo as well. The kids are able to play, and it's just a lot of fun because then we can like spoil them because they are like the true rock stars and the people who are doing all of the work. We support them. Myself and we have 2 people in our area here at Oneida, and so we do most of the supporting of them. But they're the ones who are actually, waking up with the kids, taking care of them when they have challenges and or emotional stuff going on. These guys are the ones who are like really doing the work. So we always try to really spoil them as much as we can. We always have limits, unfortunately, because of agency limits and funding and stuff like that, but we always try to spoil them. But I would like Jenny to share what got you interested in going into foster care or fostering children.
When I first started, we went through Brown County, and the reason I did start foster care is because I was told I could never have children. So I'm like, I had some friends that did it, and they're like, oh, you should do this. Give this person a call. So I did, and we started, and it's been amazing. And then we did it through Brown County for about 10, 11 years, and then my husband is Oneida, so we got to change and come to Oneida and do it solely for Lea.
Yeah.
And Oneida, the foster care.
So you're going on 10 years now
Yeah.
for Oneida, 10 years or 11 years for Brown County, now 10 years with Oneida.
Yep.
And
Yes.
she's her and her husband Mike have adopted a few children, actually, or
5.
Yep, 5 children through foster care.
Yes.
And they're one of the homes. So sometimes we have child specific where they say, for example, they have a relative that they want to take care of, and so they get licensed to foster that child specifically. And then we also have homes that are general foster homes who we just can call up and say, hey, we have this going on with this kiddo, or we have a sibling group of 2 or 3 or 4, and then we call the foster homes and see if they're able to, or if they're mostly if they're able to, if they're interested in fostering at that time. And Jenny and Mike are always, their home is always open, anytime that we can. And we have quite a few foster homes that are this way, and so we're very fortunate that way, where we can call them up and they're always willing to figure something out, and any way that they can, if possible, they will always foster and help out kiddos.
I do believe the reason for that, though, is because, like Lea and the other worker, we have great support. Amazing support. I don't care. I can text Lea, email Lea. We always know if she's going on vacation. She always gets back to us. Always.
Yeah, I mean, and so they have access to us, and they will let us know. They're always really good about communicating things with us, but also if like there's emergencies that happen or things that are coming up, or if they need to let us know, they know that they always have access to us. I think that's one of probably the good things about Oneida is that
Yes.
they do have that constant access to us. So that's always helpful, I think, in supporting them, right?
Oh,
Would you say?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never had it where we got checked in on, whether it's a text or an email. Do you need anything? How are the kiddos? It's amazing here.
It's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
Thanks. But I'm curious, how many kids have you had? How many kids over the years do you think have been in and out of your home?
With Oneida, we haven't had many. We've had about 10 from you, 10, 12 from you, because they've been longer term.
Yeah.
But over 150.
Yeah.
And that's right from the hospital all the way up to 17 years old that we've had. And yes, there's some good times and there's some bad times. You get kids that they're angry that their parents, can't take them and they have to come to a stranger's home, But you do your best to try to implement their needs, wants, traditions into your home. It's always a learning experience.
And they have, how many kids do you have? 6?
At home right now?
Yes.
2, 4, 6, 7 at home.
7. And 4 of them are your own kiddos.
4, yes. 4 at home are ours, and then we have 3 foster children.
Yeah, and their kids are also it's just amazing because they're always like helpful and they always want to know, how can they help
Or put in their orders.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. Sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, do you guys have any?" The little ones will be like, "Can we get a baby?
Can we get a girl?
The orders.
Yeah,
Because my girls aren't sharing a room right now where the boys are, and they don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
And I said, so they really enjoy it. We all have a total of 13 children. My husband had children before we were married. I only have one biological child, but our oldest will be 28 in July. Every child of ours comes over to see the kids when we get kids, because we try to have a hello dinner when they first come in. When they're a baby, they don't really realize it, and then a goodbye dinner. It's not always goodbye; it's a see you later too.
Yeah.
yeah.
But all of our kids are always, and then when they were doing house visits, they're like, Leah, do you have, we would like a little girl or we would like a little boy. And it's
like Leah has a list and they're like, we'll take this. We'll take this one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's cute. So I would just always, okay, I'll keep that in mind, because it's so sweet, that because they're so open and they have big hearts. All of them do. And so it's, and even when I go over there to see the kids or the foster kids, you can just see that they're creating bonds as well. And they take care of each other and they're looking after each other. And that's very common in foster homes, is that their families are open and they have big hearts as well. I think that it definitely takes a different level of person to foster, because you really have to be loving and you have to be open, but then you also have to, I think probably that's maybe the hardest part is like letting them go as well. But I think that you guys have been able to do it so positive and so great that you still keep those connections. Even when they grow up, you still have those connections with some of the kids that you fostered. But it's done in a good way so that it's not, so that when they are going home, it's a positive thing that they're going home to their parents. And so they're not, hanging on to them. They're sending them off in a good way. And that's always been the case for sure with them and we've seen that with other homes as well.
That's awesome.
It is hard. Some people, they want to foster to keep the child, but if you come into it knowing that the best thing for the child is reunification and the healthiest, and because every child that comes into foster care has a little trauma that they've been through. So if you can keep a really good connection too with the birth families is really helpful. I know it's really hard for a lot of people, But after doing it for so many years, you kind of like, oh, ding, ding, this is what works.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I kind of want to touch on too. Is like, what are the things that are working for you? That like, if there are new families that are going to be foster parents and getting into foster care, what are some of the things that you recommend that would definitely help them out? And
Ask a lot of questions.
a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. Take the training that Oneida Social Services offers. Their conscious discipline, their
Trauma-informed.
amazing. It really helps you. And lean on your foster care worker questions, email.
I think that that's probably what works best too, as far as like even with the coordinators, us, and then working with the foster parents too, is that making sure that you have those relationships and building those relationships, because you have to be, and part of it is you get to know them when you're licensing, because you kind of dig in pretty deep,
Yes.
with a lot of questions and just interviews and those kinds of things. But it's also like having and continuing that connection and that support, so that way when there is challenges, they can call you and say, hey, this is going on. And sometimes it's not even like us giving them solutions. Sometimes it's just them talking about it out loud. It kind of, they are able to come up with their own solutions, or we can connect them with some solutions. Jenny, for example, she's kind of like a mentor to some of our other newer foster homes. So so whenever we get new foster homes, I like to connect them with her, because they have so much experience, her and Mike, and with our other senior foster homes as well, because it's important to like have that support. And I can provide support, and I do provide support the best I can, but it's also helpful to have somebody that is in the same boat as you and that can connect, and who's had experiences, or who's been through something similar. And so that's why we always like to connect them with our senior homes, or whatever we want to call, or more seasoned homes. Yeah.
Well, because when you're a new foster parent and you come into this, a lot of times you have to remember the parents are going to be upset because they get their children taken away.
Yeah.
So they're going to be angry at you, and sometimes they just need to vent. The birth parents and tell you just let them go off, but it's not a reflection of who you are.
And I think that you guys have figured out, and which has been helpful in reunifying as well, and just building that relationship, is they're really good about like connecting with the birth parents, and also allowing them to come to their home and see the kids there, and they realize the power, but also the strength in having that relationship with the biological parents, so that way they feel better, about their kid, where their kids are. They have that relationship. They can call them, or hook up with visits, or sometimes in holidays, or just kind of working together is going to be more beneficial for the kiddos overall.
Yes, that's really important. I think making the birth parent, they become more successful then, and they will hopefully do what they need to do to get their child back.
So like there's a level of transparency and then also responsibility on those families.
Like when they come over, I've been lucky enough to be blessed with some birth families that are safe enough to come into my home with my other children. And they do the work. They'll make the bottle, or they'll feed them lunch. They'll change them. They can get them dressed, and make them do the hands-on.
Yeah.
And then they like, oh, this foster family is not trying to take my child away.
Yeah.
So, not always. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody.
And I think that's probably, when you're asking about lows, there are some lows. Sometimes, the parents aren't, they're really struggling, and they're just not able to get on their feet. And sometimes that can come out, it can come out to the foster parents, I think. and it becomes overwhelming for them, and so they're not really sure how to cope, especially if they don't have those resources or tools. But what would you say are some of the lows that you've experienced?
When a parent can't quit a certain behavior, and the child figures out what it is, and how the child comes to you and says, I know that my mom is lying to me because so and so. And it, I still, after this many years, you still shed tears because you don't ever want to see a child hurt. But usually, again, we have support. We could take the kids and get them counseling, and we let them talk when they want to talk. We don't pressure them, and have like this little space that's safe that we just talk, and it's only my husband and I with the child, or just me and the child, or my husband with the child.
Just like Lea said before, like providing those resources and tools for them.
Yes, that's very important. Because a lot of mental health issues come along with some of the children.
Yeah, I mean, in they've been through. You guys went through twice, right? Through the trauma informed training, just because they felt like it was so like there was some
I would
stuff
do it
that
again.
you picked up.
Each time you do it, you learn
You learn a new
more stuff.
But I think that that's also helped you understand some of the traumas and how to. I think I
Help
noticed.
identify more things and keep going. Like, for instance, a child, we can not diagnose, but we can like see like, oh, okay, this is where we got to go for this issue.
Yeah.
And
recognizing some
Yes.
of
like some of the behaviors and why like they might be stemming or acting that way. Realizing like, well, this actually could be trauma instead of actually a behavioral issue.
Yes. Yep. Like a lot of people want to say, oh, this child is ADHD. It's from their trauma. And so you get them trauma-based therapy, whether it be musical, they have
art therapy.
esco with horses.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I know the term. I can't think.
I always want to call it equinox, but that's not. It sounds like that.
Equestrian or it's equestrian.
But what I mean about saying this is we get all that support from Oneida, from our workers. Lea is my worker, and we'll come and say to her A, B, and C. She's like, okay, let's do E, F, and G. That's just works really well. There's going to be tears.
Yep. There's been situations where it's been hard. And I've built a relationship well enough with them as well where I know when you might need something or you're frustrated about something. And she likes to joke and she calls me her therapist because I meet with them like weekly. I specifically meet with my families weekly just to check in and see how they're doing. Is there anything that's come up? Would you like to talk about anything? And so she will vent to me about stuff, or she'll talk to me about what's going on. So and I think that's helpful to just be aware and to also just so I can notice when things she might need some help or resources with something as well.
And a lot of the help would mean like maybe you need a break, get respite, for a weekend or certain things like that.
Yep.
I mean, they're always there. Like, I swear Lea has made me grow into this different person. I just come into things with eyes wide open.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I've done that. I think that maybe we've helped each other to recognize, some strengths and.
It's all her.
I think it's all her.
Well, another question I want to ask is, well, how do we get into foster care then too? I guess you could answer that pretty.
Yeah, for us, well, so we like to. word of mouth is a big way to get recruitment, is what we call it. We do have some like information out there and signs and those kinds of things with our phone numbers, but it's basically connecting with us. So myself and my coworker is Kathleen, and we both do the same exact thing. So we both license homes, and then so they just, if somebody's interested in fostering, it's best to just call us, because I was also a foster parent at one point, and I remember calling and signing up, but it was more like just here, they sent me the packet of information and application, and then I just had to figure it out for myself. And so having that experience and knowing, okay, well, that really did not work, for me.
Yeah.
So, and because there wasn't a lot of support there. And so I knew that coming into this, that I needed to be what I wanted and what I missed for when I was fostering. And so I wanted to bring that forward. And so when they call us, and it's the same thing with Kathleen as well. She was a foster parent as well. So we both have had, not as nearly as much experience as Jenny. Because it does take a special person, and I was not cut for it, but and that's okay. But for me, my contribution is to help them, and so what they would do is they would contact us, and then we're going to help them along the way. So we're not going to just give them the packet of information. We're going to help them fill out the paperwork or check in with them and see if they have questions, and just guide them along the way. So that it's not, and so I think that might, some people will find that really helpful, and then some people might, because we're Native people, so sometimes it's like we kind of just want to feel things out. So I think it's helpful to have that connection and be able to see them and meet them, and for them to get to know us as well. I think that makes it a lot smoother. And so it's mostly just a matter of getting in touch with us, and then we're going to help them through the licensing process. Licensing takes averages around like 3 months, and is when you're licensed, because there is like interviews that are done, because we do want to get to know the families. We want to make sure that we know what their strengths are, and also what can be helpful for them. And then it's also important to get to know their background, so that we know what might be triggers for them, what would be good fits for them, especially when they're first coming in. So there's that process, and so we want to make sure that we're not leaving them on their own to do that. So I think I answered that question.
Yeah, you answered it.
It's very painless.
Yeah. It is pretty, I think it's pretty painless, yeah.
Yes.
Is there different levels or tiers to foster care?
There is actually. So there's level 1, which is mostly for, like I said, child specific. So that would be like a family member who is fostering one of their relatives. And then there's level 2. Most of our foster homes, if not all, I believe, are level 2 foster homes. And so those are usually the general foster homes, and they're taking in kiddos. Level 3 is for kiddos who, so there's more training that is involved. We don't do level 3, but they're usually for children who have higher needs, and so they're special needs, and so they will need a higher level. And then there's 4 and 5, which is more like group homes, and those, so a little bit more of a bigger, broader spectrum for licensing. But yes, that's a good question.
Will you guys ever be more than a 2?
I can't say yes or no to that. I'm thinking, I think that would be something that we definitely would have to look at it as an agency and see if that is a need for our community, but then also, is it something that we can continue to support? So that I can't say yes or no to that, I guess.
I would suggest, if people are thinking about being a foster home, maybe calling up and doing some respite for foster homes.
Yes. That's a good way to get your feet wet and kind of...
Yes, and just take the child, for a weekend. Not saying you're going to get that child, but, take and kind of hear how things go and how things work.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so respite is when, so for example, respite for the foster homes is when we always try to encourage, where we do encourage foster homes to do respite like monthly at least, so that the way they're getting a break so that they can, and not necessarily that they need it, but just so that they will have some time to themselves or time to even just relax or whatever, just to take a breather. And so respite providers they're kind of like overnight babysitters, I guess you could call them. You know, so maybe they'll take some foster kiddos for an overnight stay, or maybe maybe Jenny just needs a day, like, and so they're not necessarily spending the night, but they're going there for a few hours or something like that. Just it's kind of like I don't want to say it's like babysitting, but it's similar. Whereas they're not placed in your home for any period of time. It's just a small visit, so that you're getting from and a lot of times we do that with foster homes before kiddos are transitioned into that home for placement. Is we'll do respite so that they can get familiar with the home and the living environments, and also just get, so they're not just going from it. And I mean, obviously we can't always do that, but that is kind of ideal, is to transition them into the home so that we're not causing any more. We always want to try to avoid trauma as much as possible. So we try to look at and assess like what are the risks here, is if we don't want to move kids as much as possible, so we'd like to keep them to stay put as long as they need to be until they can go home.
So what would the process be that for families trying to do respite?
Respite it's a shorter process. It's, we do background checks, and then there's a small application that we have them fill out, and then there's some references that are included on that. We just call and just make sure that there aren't any concerns there. But it's a much smaller application and background checks. Yeah, and then they get paid for that time as well.
Now, to be a respite home, you do not have to be Oneida enrolled.
No.
But to be a foster parent, one of the parents has to be enrolled.
Or in order to retain permanency, which is either guardianship or adoption, they would need to be Oneida enrolled. But as far as like fostering, we do have a couple of homes that are not Oneida, but they're connected to the community. So they're not just people who. Well, they're not just regular riffraff. No, I'm just kidding. We have a higher level of foster parents. I just think that we do, and so because we want to keep Oneida children connected to their culture, and so that is important to us. And so we want to make sure that the people who are fostering Oneida children are keeping them connected to Oneida culture and keeping them connected to the community, and because we believe that is important. So yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Sweet.